Welcome to Cult Film School. Class is in session. We're your hosts, Adrian, that's me, and Dion,
That's me.
that's you. In this episode titled Indonesian Cult Classics, aka My Gift to Dion, this is a bit of a celebratory episode, and by a bit, I mean completely. Dion, you had a Hallmark birthday this month.
Yes.
How does it feel?
The same? Okay, good, great. Whatever the right answer is.
I actually did not know how old you were until this year.
Oh, well, there you go.
We've been friends for a long time.
Well, I mean, as I always say, my age it changes every year.
Yeah. Okay, so there's people I know that listen to the pod that they know me, but they don't know you, and they've asked me questions about you. But what's weird is they ask me the same questions.
So what are the questions?
So multiple people, same two questions. They always ask me about you. And it's because we don't do video. But one, are you black?
Okay.
And two, how old are you?
Yeah.
To which I reply, no, and I don't know. But if I had to guess, 11. Anyways, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So, with your birth and this episode dropping on Christmas Eve, I said to you, Dion, I said, D, my gift to you, whatever you want to cover, we'll do. This is your episode. And of course, you picked two films I would not have thought of. And thus was born our double feature lineup today. Two Indonesian films, both from the 80s,
Yep.
of course, both directed by the same guy.
Yes.
And most importantly, both cult classics, allegedly.
That is a definite. Yes, they are. They're definitely called classics.
Yeah, they are. I've heard of them before I had to watch them for this.
Had to.
What we're talking about today is Mystics in Bali from 1981 and Lady Terminator from 1989. Uh, but before we get there, before we explore the world of Indonesian cinema, if you are listening to this and aren't following us on social media, consider changing that, which means follow us on social media. Links are in the show notes of this episode that you're listening to now. Also, rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and write a review on Apple Podcasts. You can let us know what you think of the show, and it will appear on Apple Podcasts forever. These reviews also help us with the exposure algorithms. So the more people review, apparently, the more we will be exposed. And Deanna and I would like to be exposed. Think about it, write it, post it, spread the word, share the cult film love if you feel so inclined. Cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com.
So Adrian.
Yes, Dion.
I'll do it again.
I'm not used to being on that side of the.
No, I know. So I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question instead. Adrian, you're probably wondering or wondered why I wanted to screen both of these films. Both these films together, these films at all. What in the hell is this? Why are you making me watch these things?
I had all those thoughts, yes.
Yeah, I kind of assumed. And so when I thought about this semester and some films I'd like to talk about, I thought about Lady Terminator, actually. And for me, Lady Terminator, in some ways, is like a symbol of my post-COVID experience. You know how, like during COVID, lots of people, you heard all these stories, right? It's like people would, because of this pause from the world, they would kind of reevaluate their life and maybe like change jobs or maybe discover a hobby or find out about themselves, right? For me, my COVID experience is kind of where I like really truly kind of jumped off, into a deep end of, for lack of a better word, like cult cinema on home video. And so it was during COVID that I discovered companies like Vinegar Syndrome and Mondo Macabro. And so I don't want to say like we're in a golden age. Um, but there's definitely, and maybe it's like one of those last hurrah things. Like we are very, very likely experiencing maybe what is the last home video format, before things go completely digital and completely streaming. But I thought I knew film history. And then, some of these companies, opened their doors, so to speak. And I'm like, I've never heard of this. Why haven't I never heard of this? And that's happened a lot over the last 4 years. And so sometimes with a company like Mondo Macabro, where they don't have a lot of films that you can legally see streaming. And we've experienced this, right? Because we've seen some Mondo films and talked about them in earlier episodes, specifically Alucarda and Who Can Kill a Child. And I know when I mentioned these to you, Adrian, in the past, I had to, not, I didn't have to sell you on them, but I was like, my Lord, you need to see these films. And you would often say, well, how do I see these films? And I would say,
Come on over.
come over and watch them. So, in many ways, Lady Terminator is what I love about film and what I love about physical media. And that is not just that you can, get copies of the latest, big budget blockbuster thing, but that there are so many like smaller cinemas, regional cinemas, cult cinemas that when I was much younger, this wasn't a possibility. For me, like it's full circle. It's like I've discovered this stuff. I want it to kind of shine a light on, I mean, in some ways these films, sure, but in some ways physical media itself, right? Cuz like I'm, fingers crossed I'm waiting for these films to come out on 4K. Right now, these films DVD only. Which itself is like, what are you talking about? We haven't had DVDs for like 15 years. And it's like, yeah, that's when these films came out on home video. Anyway, I'm babbling, but yeah, I love film, sure. But I love this idea of kind of discovering the next film, and the next film, and the next film. In my time, coincidentally, since COVID and since the lockdowns and since kind of discovering, these different corners of the globe and these different regional and cult cinemas, there's a lot more out there than I would have ever expected. And I'm better for it and I'm happier because of it. So I want to kind of share that, and laugh along the way because I'm sure we will once or twice talking about these two films.
So to summarize, this episode comes to us from post-COVID trauma.
Maybe inter-COVID trauma, but yeah, COVID. No, but seriously, right? Like this is
I know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
this. No, but like this is the story, and this was my story. My story is just they're very short. This comes from like obsessive retail traumatic reaction to COVID. Maybe I just bought a lot of stuff and didn't go out.
I remember those lockdown phone calls, and you're like, "Oh, I bought this. I bought that." I was like, "Holy shit! You have a lot of movies."
I do have a lot of movies, and you've seen it.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before. You do not have a collection. You have a store. And if you have a will, put me in it.
You have to get behind my wife.
She will not want your movie collection.
Oh, no, she won't. But I do frequently tell her when I have something, and I'm just like, hey, just so don't sell this for $10. Look, when something happens to me, it's either that or like bury me with it all.
You have some titles there that I'm sure she could retire with.
Probably.
Anyway, so with all that, Dion,
Yes.
I think it's time we take our cult film school listeners on the crazy field trip that is Indonesian cult cinema.
Yes.
And to our listeners, brace yourselves because it's time to talk Mystics in Bali and Lady Terminator. This is Indonesian Cult Classics.
On this Christmas Eve, we have one rule. Still the same rule. And that's to do your homework before coming to class. Please watch these two films in advance. Otherwise, beware of spoilers. Just a little note, and really it's like two notes. The story of even just discovering these films and kind of these films being brought out to a wider audience is in part the story of home video label Mondo Macabro, who released both of these films that we're going to talk about today on DVD. The founder of Mondo Macabro, Pete Toombs, was an author, was a writer, and was writing about these different kinds of weird and wild different cinemas. He authors a book called Mondo Macabro, Weird and Wonderful Cinema Around the World in like 97, 98, on all kinds of different, like different countries' cinemas that kind of veer toward exploitation, sexploitation, fantasy, horror, action. This book, in some ways, becomes a blueprint for that home video label. As I know I've said to you, Adrian, like that's the dream, right? Write about films and, kind of discover films, bring films out to a new audience, and then start a home video label. It's like, great, if only. But then the other thing that I think contextually is interesting to note with these two films today is just where these films come from. We have in episode, I don't know, one, we were talking about Canadian slasher films of the 70s and 80s and talking about how the government effectively like endorsed, kind of gave like tax grants and tax breaks to kind of start a homegrown cinema. And that cinema was a cinema that, was meant to be exported to make money and then it kind of indirectly, support an economy within the country. Canada did that, and Canada did that with like slasher films and sex comedies, right? But this kind of thing is happening everywhere, and so a similar thing is happening in the late 1970s in Indonesia. A new government sees this opportunity for, hey, wait a minute, we don't need to import all these Hollywood films. We can start making our own films, and so they were basically kind of cutting deals with producers to like, yeah, we're going to let you import Hollywood films as long as you kind of have this ratio of making your own homegrown films. And so what ends up happening is you have a glut of these films. They, kind of veer towards cheap, they veer towards exploitation and horror and things that are salacious and titillating, but will get asses in seats. And better yet, things that can kind of have, like a regional take or kind of this national take on, Western trends. So we're going to see films that are definitely like influenced by, what we could loosely call Indonesian folklore, Indonesian kind of like national stories of like, kind of beliefs and traditions. But these are entirely made so that they intersect with things that a Western audience would understand and kind of immediately see. It's like, oh, this is like this horror film. This is like this action film. I get it. Anyway, as a result, you get a growing body of films coming out of this period in this time, which are, I mean, for lack of a better word, like tapping into the kinds of films that we like to watch and talk about, kind of cult films, martial arts films, action films, fantastical, supernatural films, horror films, you name it, exploitation films. And they're all kind of like government endorsed in a way. And what's interesting to a Western audience is to see both of these worlds colliding, kind of what we could call like an Eastern world and a Western world, how they're doing it on these terrains of a genre we all know, and how they're in some ways really, really weird because of it, and in other ways, really, really entertaining because it's something that we don't really see all that often. Those are the contexts. That gets us Mystics in Bali and the rest of it.
All right, here we go. Okay. So, if you go on IMDb, this is what it says. A woman researches a book that takes her to the black magic cult of Liak in Bali. She meets an evil witch who promises to train her dark arts. I guess in the dark arts, they meant. But she is tricked and turned into a flying vampire with internal organs hanging from her neck.
That is this film.
Yeah, I have questions. This is the first time I'm reading this. The vampire thing is, I guess so.
Can I just tell you, I'm just going to put this in your head and you're going to go, holy shit. This is an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Kathy is both Renfield and Mina. Hendra is kind of like Harker. His uncle is like Van Helsing. Now you're like, I love this because I can kind of see the gears. You're like second guessing everything. Wait a minute, is it? No,
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
it's 100% an adaptation of Dracula.
Yeah. I watched the film and it never occurred to me that there was a vampire in this film. But okay.
One character drinks blood, and both characters are destroyed at the end by sunlight.
Yeah. Indonesian Dracula, I guess.
Totally. I want to put that in your head, but your head and your head listening, because it is a way to make sense of it, I think. If you don't know this film, it's an adaptation of Dracula. Just like buckle up and get ready for it.
Yeah. If it's Dracula, it gives me something to latch onto that has some sort of linear narrative.
Totally.
And this is directed by,
Jut Jolly.
so he's like the Francis Ford Coppola of Indonesia. If this is Dracula.
Very good. From what I read, his name comes up a bunch of times for these films, in part because of his career as, I think, a author and a screenwriter. He was one of a small number of people who had the technical expertise to actually direct a film, and so for that reason, he gets called upon a bunch. And so for that reason, he's associated with the two films we're talking about today. Other films like the other famous one is Dangerous Seductress.
Okay, so the plan is to kind of go through the movie because most, if not all, our listeners have not seen Mystics in Bali.
It's probably fair.
Yeah. So the movie opens with a bang. So we have two people. We have Kathy, who's an American student who's writing a book on an Indonesian black magic called Liak.
Yes.
And she's with a guy named Mahandra.
Who's a local.
Yes, he's a local, and we don't know their relationship. He's her friend, boyfriend, lover, acquaintance. It's unclear at this point, but we can safely say they at least know each other. And our opening line in the film is Mahandra saying to Kathy, "I'm surprised a pretty girl like you would be interested in learning black magic." This is the first line in the movie. So at that point, I was like, "Here we go." like, um, so Mahandra offers to introduce Kathy to a Liak black magic magician witch
Yes.
that night,
Yes.
as you do. So at that night, they're in like the forest, and you hear like a cackle laugh, like a like she. It sounds like the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, I was whenever I see this and hear this character, I'm reminded of witches from like Miyazaki films. Like I think there's a witch similar to this even in like Spirited Away.
And you will hear this cackle give or take a billion times in this film.
I love the cackle. I'm giddy when I hit the cackle.
So he says he recognizes this laugh as the most powerful clan of them all, and the Liak magician witch, she's talking to them, and she sounds like all the characters are dubbed,
Yes.
and she sounds like she sounds like the bridge keeper from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Answer me these questions 3.
Yeah, where he's like, "What is your name? What is your quest? What is your favorite color?" Like, that's how she sounds. Like, I couldn't get that out of my head.
Oh no, yeah, that's totally there.
Yeah. So she says that she will teach Kathy the ways of the Liak and to come back tomorrow, and they shake hands, and then the magician witch disappears, and Kathy's just holding her hand, and the hand drops to the ground and kind of crawls away.
The hand has foot long fingernails.
Yeah, even the way she walks, I was just like, like,
Yep.
but anyways, we go from that scene to, I guess, the next night because they're in different clothes, but we're in the wood, like we're in the same location again, like immediately.
So one, yes. Two, maybe confusing. Three, efficiency. Like we don't need nothing. Just like cut to the next night.
So Mahendra and Kathy hear the voice of who is clearly the Liak magician witch, and Mahendra says, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Did they mix up the scenes or something?" Right?
There's so many scenes with lines like this where they're just like, I don't know why you're sick. It must have been something you ate, not the fucking witch you kind of made a pact with the devil last night. There's all kinds of stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's one of the charms of this film.
That and every line is delivered so nonchalantly,
Yes.
no matter what the circumstance. That's kind of my favorite part.
No, it's great. It's great.
So the Liak magician witch says she needs blood, and as luck would have it, Kathy and Mahandra brought a basket of bottles of blood. And they take the bottles of blood out and place them on the ground, and a super large tongue emerges from the bushes and tastes the blood.
And drinks it.
Yeah, I guess. It's just a tongue dipping into the bottles.
Well, yeah, but the liquid kind of decreases. I mean, if you were looking for that like sound when you're slurping through a straw, that's yeah, like the tongue is consuming the blood liquid. Yes, that is what's happening.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm starting to see the vampire thing. The Liak magician witch says, This is good blood. Next, I need you to take off your skirt. I need to write the magic spell in a secret place. So Kathy just removes her skirt and the tongue like tattoos her leg. And then the magician witch tells her to come back the next night again and to make sure that she wears a tappy.
Yes.
And Mahandra explains immediately that a tappy is an undergarment. So then we're in a room with Kathy Mahandra. I don't know if this is like later that night or the next day. I don't know. She's wearing a bikini, which I guess is the tappy.
I thought it was a bikini.
It's a bikini, but the tappy thing is never explained again. So I just assumed that was the.
Isn't it the skirt she wears under her clothes later?
I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really have any.
Not really,
Okay.
no.
So he's sitting on the bed and she's standing in a bikini, like very kind of intimately close to him. And she asks him to read the tattoo on her leg. And he just stares at her and she's like, Mahandra, come on. I'm sure you want to know the secret too. And it's like, dude is not getting the hint. He smiles and says, "Yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out." And she's like, "Come closer, read it." And it's like, dude, like hurry up, like anyways, this goes on way too long and then she just is like, "Oh, whatever." She pulls his hand away. It's like moments passed and it's just like, "You fucking idiot." Anyways, we find out what the tattoo says is it says Liak. So, I mean, like after all that, it's like, okay.
She goes back 3 nights, right? And on the 3rd night, that's when shit really goes down. So there's this, folktale rule of 3 thing that's happening, but the one thing I wanted to note is there is this, yeah, you said like the sexually charged moment where she is in a state of undress and he kind of is feeling something you can tell from his gaze and she's kind of feeling something you can tell from his gaze. They're getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
Of course, she has already been infected by the Liak witch. And so if we think back to a film like even a novel like Dracula, like when Mina is first infected, she becomes more like sexually seductive, right? Like that power becomes sexualized. And so that is what you're seeing in this scene.
Right.
I just want to say this whole Dracula thing, it was only on my second screening of this that I had these thoughts like, hey, it's kind of weird that this character does this. And then I was thinking, like, the first time I saw it, I had no clue. Like, it didn't even occur to me. I was just like, what am I watching? This is so fucking weird.
Oh yeah, yeah. With this whole like keeping in mind Dracula stuff, sort of. I don't not that it makes sense, but it gives you something to kind of like latch onto in terms of meaning. When I was watching this, Dracula was not in my brain, so I'm just like, what the fuck? Anyways, okay, so we're at the next night.
Night number 3.
So Kathy and the witch magician are dancing around a fire, and then they transform into pigs.
Yeah.
Cut to the next day. um, uh, Mahandra is talking to his uncle, and he asks if there's a spell to break the Liak curse, and his uncle gives him a dagger and says it will increase his power.
Yes.
Right. Then Kathy and Mahandra are talking, and he tells her that when the fire goes out, that someone has died, implying that she killed someone last night.
Hmm.
But we didn't see any of that. We just saw them dancing and then turn into pigs.
Well, I mean, he tells his uncle this is the story that she told him. So effectively, the pig thing is a flashback.
Okay.
After they turn into pigs, it just cuts to sometime in the future. Some other person is talking to some other person. What happened to the pigs? What happened to the witch? What happened to the murders? Nothing. Efficiency. Efficiency.
And all this dialogue about what's going on is just so matter of fact, very nonchalant tone, which is hilarious. So Kathy tells Mahandra that this is turning into the most horrible nightmare because she's now a murderer. She says it with the enthusiasm that you would when you go to a car wash and you see that the lineup's a little longer than you expected. So she goes back the next night and she's with the witch magician who now looks less monstrous and appears as like an older woman.
Hmm.
And the witch magician says that she will need to borrow Kathy's head for a short time. Then Kathy's head and spinal cord just kind of float up out of her body and fly away to a house and into the bedroom of a pregnant woman who's lying down on her bed. And the floating head gets right up in between her legs. And we see the pregnant belly kind of go down,
Deflate.
deflate. So Kathy's floating head is eating this unborn baby?
Yes.
Right.
The disembodied head with entrails, that is the Layak, right? Like that is the folkloric, like mythological whatever figure. That scene is 100, like is at the mid, like exactly the midpoint of the film. Like this is the almost the biggest scene in the film. Fetus eating fetus eating. It's so insane. Like when you're seeing it, you're legitimately wondering like what am I seeing? Did someone slip something into my drink and I can't believe what I'm seeing? And to your point, what you've said is it kind of is just presented so matter of factly.
Yeah.
Like it's not like there's a big music cue or there's a jump scare. It's just like, nope, this is just shit happening. Like at like the most that happens, which is kind of funny, is when the floating head goes into the room, the handmaid or whatever, like the nurse gets like blown out the window. That's like, oh, okay, we got a stunt, and that's it. It's not even unsettling, like, "Oh my god, that's gross." It's just like it kind of, like, defies logic. It defies like, I've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah. It's because everyone's reaction to everything is so nonchalant. Like even the woman, the pregnant woman, is just like looking at her like, oh, like it's just like so you're just like you're puzzled by it because everyone's reactions just do not fit the circumstances.
I don't wanna always bring in David Lynch with all these things, but, like, other filmmakers do this. They kinda, like, create a world where it doesn't fully match our own, and it's kind of off-putting. This doesn't feel off-putting, it just feels weird. Everything about it is weird. Maybe that dips into horror in a way, but none of it is horrific, even though it is the most horrific thing you can imagine.
So while this is happening, these two guys show up and look at what's happening again with no expression. Then the floating head like flies off. There's a younger woman who kind of is around the corner outside the house and sees the flying head fly away. And we're like, who's that character? But never mind that. Then we're with a group of like men. They're sitting cross-legged in a circle. I don't know who they're like, wise elders, or I guess, or something akin to that.
Aren't they friends of the uncle?
I don't know. I mean, the uncle's there, so sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think two of them are the two guys that's witnessed the baby eating.
So you're saying that this might have taken place minutes or hours after the other scene.
I think so.
Efficiency.
Yes.
No transitions. We're just editing scene to scene. It's like a stage play.
Yeah, I mean, this movie could potentially take place in the same day. I don't. That's like at some point, time is a. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Like we're told, oh, come the next night, and you're like, okay, so I guess there's multiple nights. I guess I don't know, but these men are sitting cross-legged. They're talking about what's going on, and yeah, so one of them's Mahandra's uncle, and the one who witnessed it says like the funny thing about the floating head is that it had light-colored hair, and you're like, that was the funny thing about it. Like, are you like what the fuck?
Of course, when I hear that, right? When I hear that, I'm thinking like, well, it's because she's supposed to be the American, I guess. But she doesn't have like colored hair though, right? Like
Well, that's the thing. Her hair is so dark. Like it's not even light colored. So I'm like, What?" Um, but enough of that. So the next night, the witch appears, even younger than last time. So she's kind of like, you know, getting younger, I guess. Mahandra's watching them, like her and Kathy, like from the bushes,
yes.
and Kathy and the witch magician transform into snakes. The next morning, Mahandra and Kathy are in the room and she throws up mice. And Mahandra says very calmly, Kathy, what's the matter with you? And it's like, dude, you saw her turn into a snake last night. That's what happened.
But this is when he says, "I think it well, maybe it was something you ate."
Yeah, perhaps the food last night is making you sick now. It's like, what? Like, so he says that again, like he might as well have said, "Oh, it's raining." He tells Kathy that he has to go away for a few days, because it's not like she's in trouble or anything. So Kathy's fucked, and the next night her head is, off flying around, and we see Mahandra in the back of a car, like a cab or something, and he just kind of looks through his side window and sees Kathy's floating head, and like again, no reactions to anything. Then we go from that to Kathy is confronted by the witch magician. Kathy says that she's done, but the witch says that she isn't done with her yet and needs her to get more blood for her. And Kathy says, all right, tomorrow I'll go get it. At this point, you're just in for the ride.
Oh, yeah.
Then we're in a room and Kathy's body is in the corner because her head is off flying around getting blood. And Mahandra's uncle comes in and sticks toothpicks in like her neck. Wow. And then the uncle meets up with Mahandra and says that he didn't think it would. Mahandra says he didn't think it would go this far. And his uncle suspects that Kathy is under the influence of supernatural forces. And it's like, yeah,
The toothpicks are I mean, they're a little bigger than toothpicks, but they are still toothpicks. Are meant to prevent the disembodied head from reattaching to the body.
we don't know that in that scene.
Oh, no, not in that scene, no, we only know that when the disembodied head comes back and tries to rejoin the body.
Right. But in the scene where it's happening, we just see him stick toothpicks in her neck.
That is correct.
Yeah, so Kathy's head can't go back to her body because of the toothpicks. The uncle tells Mahandra that if she reunites with her body, then like they can't control her. And you're like, oh, okay. And then Mahandra says it's all his fault that Kathy has become like this now. And it's like, yeah, you introduced her to the witch magician.
And then he fucked off for 2 days.
And yeah, like all this is, you saw her turn into a pig, snakes, heads flying around, grabbing blood from people, and you went on, I don't know, a sabbatical? Anyways, Mahandra has a dream later that night, and, I think that's as close physically as he gets to Kathy, is I think they hug, and then he's out with his uncle, and then the witch appears, but now she looks like how she did at the beginning, more monstrous looking. The uncle and the witch battle it out with black magic?
Well, black magic and white magic, presumably.
There's like animated beams going around and they're battling it out and Kathy's head is and body reunite.
Mhm.
Then the younger woman from earlier in the film appears and is apparently the ex-lover of Mahandra.
Yes.
She goes to fight the witch and the witch immediately kills her. So you're like, what was the point of that character and like at all? Like I don't get it.
It gives you, added dimension to the character. We don't need backstory, though, efficiency.
When I first saw this movie, I thought that character was the younger version of the witch.
Oh,
Yeah. Then the witch magician kills the uncle, and then another uncle appears? Or is it the same uncle, but now he's just older looking?
it's the same uncle. It's like Gandalf the White, right? He you strike him down, but he comes back because he's white magic. He has superpowers because of the magic.
Okay, yeah, okay. So it's the same guy then.
It is, yes.
Just has like whiter hair.
Yeah, like Gandalf.
Sure. So Gandalf looking uncle continues to battle it out with the witch magician, who then turns into like a human pig hybrid,
Yes.
which is hilarious. Yeah, I just imagine that actor going to work, putting that costume on. It's just, anyways. Uh, So then the witch magician then turns into from the human pig hybrid to some sort of character that looks like a children's mascot, like the Hamburglar, but by way of Freddy Krueger, right? Like I don't know what this is. They don't really explain it, but it's
No, they don't.
then the sun comes up and kills the witch magician, and Kathy falls to her death in front of Mahendra and the uncle. The uncle helps Mahendra like stand to his feet, and then we cut to credits. The movie's fucking over, like immediately.
Efficiency.
You watch it and it's like, oh, it's over. That's Mystics in Bali.
This thing is something. And some of those scenes, as much as, this is funny, that's confusing, like that midpoint scene with the head and the pregnant woman. Like I'll never forget that. Just shocking. Shocking, shocking. Needs to be seen for that alone, honestly.
I've never seen anything like it before. When I watched it the first time, I was reminded of that scene in Reanimator, but even in that film, they cut away at the moment of impact. Not this thing.
I was shocked that it is Dracula, and it didn't occur to me when I first saw it, but it's totally Dracula.
Only when you said that, things kind of made a bit more sense, but, like, I've watched this thing a couple of times. I never was Dracula in my mind watching this, so it's a whole lot of, like, "What the fuck?"
Oh no, I think even though it's Dracula, there's still a lot of whole what the fuck, right? Like it's its balls and its imagination almost kind of make up for what could otherwise be thought of as like traditional flaws in a narrative film. It's great. It's great. And I mean, I've been saying efficiency, efficiency. Like this thing is not even 90 minutes. This thing moves at a clip.
Oh, yeah. You kinda lose your sense of time watching it, both in the film and in life. Like,
That the as noted, yeah.
do you have any final thoughts on Mystics of Bali?
I'm one really glad that I kind of put this on your radar. And I'm really glad to revisit it because I think both you needed to see it. Other people need to see it. And I'm really glad I got to revisit it. Cuz yeah, I think I enjoyed it more the second time than I did the first time.
I highly recommend it. I don't know who I would recommend it to, but the tagline the only tagline that I could find is apparently on your Mondo Macabro DVD.
Oh,
She sold her soul to possess the secrets of black magic.
yeah, that's true.
She did that, yeah.
I approve.
Apparently, this is based on a book, which is not Dracula.
I'd be curious to know what that book is.
I would love to read that book. Yeah. Fuck.
That was our journey through Mystics in Bali. But we'd be curious to know what you think about Mystics in Bali or what we've had to say about it. Please, if you have those thoughts, reach out to us. We're on a number of social media platforms, and we have an email address where you can reach out to us directly, and that is cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com.
All right. Main event. Okay. Lady Terminator. So if you go on IMDb, it will say the spirit of an ancient evil queen possesses the body of a young anthropological student who then goes on a murderous rampage. She is an anthropologist.
Oh, she is. She's not even a lady.
No, she makes that very clear.
Oh, that's very, very clear. I think that's a good summary.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the film, right? Like it's an action film. So if this thing is 80 minutes long, like 60 minutes of it is like shooting. So plot wise, that's all you need.
But unlike Terminator, this one, spoilers, has a lady.
It does. It does have a lady. Well, to a point.
And for our listeners who have seen Lady Terminator, if you've seen Lady Terminator, you can say you've seen Terminator.
Yes, that's correct.
And this is directed by the same,
Jalil, yeah. Same director.
credited as Jaleel Jackson.
Yeah. If you want to know why, because of what I said at the beginning, They wanted to export this. This was something that, let's say, other countries would think of, like Western countries would think of as, hey, this is made by a fellow American.
Okay, it's one of those. Okay.
It's totally one of those. And I mean, this thing made it to 42nd Street on New York Grindhouse. Unlike Mystics in Bali, this thing, in part because of this idea that, like, even though it was shot locally, it was shot as if it was, this is like any town USA, big city USA.
Everyone's American. Everyone's dubbed, but everyone's American.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, like, that's all very, very intentional. And so this idea that the director didn't use his name is totally, this is the reason.
Okay, so this one starts off with a title card, somewhere in the South Sea in 1889. So we're in like, I guess the South Sea. And then there's like a castle by the sea. And inside we have the South Sea's queen, who is a like a horny Indonesian queen
Yes.
who like lures men to, how do I say this delicately?
There's no way to say this delicately.
Fuck them to death?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could have just said lures them to their death.
through sex.
There you go.
Okay. That this based on a book?
Not based on a book that I'm aware of, but it's based on this character. The Queen of the South Sea is a character in folklore tradition.
Oh, okay.
They've just taken that as a jumping off point to remake Terminator.
Oh, I realize it's a jumping off point. um, okay, so so how she fucks these guys to death is she has a magic eel that lives inside her, and it essentially bites off the male parts just at the moment of climax, which not the worst way to go. I'd be okay going out that way.
That's the time to do it.
So we see her do this with one lover, then she moves on to another lover, like literally right after, who looks like he just came off the set of Officer and a Gentleman.
Yes.
And then this guy, he knows about her magic vagina eel because he just takes it out of her and then holds it up, and then it turns into a jagged dagger, and then it is struck by lightning.
Yeah, yeah.
Then the horny Indonesian queen calls him a bastard and says that he tricked her and that in 100 years she'll have revenge on his great granddaughter, which it's oddly specific and it's kind of unfair. Like this guy, he really got it off easy. Like she could have just killed him.
Well, no, hey, that's a choice. Revenge best served cold.
Yeah, when it happens, it's kind of hilarious. But, anyways, so from here, this is our teaser because then we have 20 minutes of B footage of just waves while the opening credits appear on the screen. So at this point, we're in like a mystics of Bali-esque Indonesian mysticism kind of territory with the storytelling at this point.
Yes. It's drawing on local or Indonesian folklore, similar to Mystics in Bali, 100%.
So credits are over. Then suddenly we're in modern day, and there's a young lady named Tanya who, as she'll tell us several times when we meet her, she is not a lady, she is an anthropologist. She says that about a half dozen times, and she is researching the South Sea's queen, and she's on a boat speaking to the boatman.
Captain?
I guess he's the only one on the boat.
Yeah, so he's driving the boat, the captain.
And so she's, I guess, going diving to find the queen's like lost city.
Yeah, because the story from 100 years ago was that the queen basically took her castle by the water and kind of magically went under the water. Anthropological treasures.
So she goes in the water, then a giant wave right off the set of The Perfect Storm hits the boat, and the boatman's, I guess, dead.
Yes.
Then we cut to Tanya, who falls on a bed of rose petals. You may say, wait, Adrian, you just said that she was in the water. You missed something. Adrian missed nothing. This is what happens. She falls on a bed,
Efficiency.
and then the bed like straps her arms and legs and spreads her legs.
Kind of like Evil Dead.
Then the magic vagina eel appears and enters her.
Correct.
vagina. So now Tanya is possessed by the South Seas Queen,
Correct.
which makes her now, wait for it, Lady Terminator.
Now the title makes complete sense.
So now she is a Lady Terminator. And from here, she walks up out of the water. She's naked. And we have this scene with these kind of like punks on the beach or whatever. And at this point, this scene is eerily looking familiar. In fact, it's kind of almost exactly like that scene in Terminator where Arnold shows up naked with the Bill Paxton punks. The only difference here is she doesn't just take their clothes, she fucks them to death, then takes their clothes.
She takes their penises.
Yes.
Yes.
So from here, we are basically watching a kind of a checklist of notable scenes from the movie Terminator, and in some cases, the same shots from Terminator.
In addition to Terminator, I am always reminded, especially when I see the lead actress walking around topless, sucking the life force out of these men by their genitals. I'm always reminded of Lifeforce,
Right?
the, the Toby Hooper film. That comes out around the same time as Terminator, roughly.
Yeah.
And this film, Lady Terminator, comes out, a few years after both of them. And while you are 100% correct, this is in some respects not even a beat for beat, but like a set piece for set piece reimagining of Terminator. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, okay, giving Hooper some love. It's like, yeah, this is space vampires.
Yeah, so I mean if you've seen Terminator, like you know what happens. So we have like a policeman named Max who is like our Kyle Reese who has to protect Erica, who is the great granddaughter of the guy from 100 years ago.
Who was also the Sarah Connor.
And then we have our Lady Terminator going after her. So it's Terminator with occasional mysticism and some random magical dick biting and a lot of gunfire.
A lot of gunfire.
Yeah.
That's underselling it.
Lot yeah, there seems to be like unlimited ammo in this movie, and the Lady Terminator, you know she's a Lady Terminator because she specifically shoots men's crotchal regions.
Oh yeah, that's the target.
Yeah. What does she shoot them with? Well, she steals an Uzi from a hotel security guard, which, they have on hand.
I mean, I don't know the hotel, so sure, I can suspend my disbelief.
So we essentially have naked Terminator getting clothes from the street punks scene. We have the techno bar. We have the Terminator chasing our romantic leads in a cop car. We have the love scene with the shot of their hands. We have the police station shootout. We have "Come with me if you want to live."
Uh,
Whether or not these references or scenes make sense in the story doesn't matter. They're there.
I also want to give a special shout out here to Max McNeil's cop buddies.
Oh, they're the best.
They're, the only one I remember by name is Snake,
Yeah, because his name's Snake.
because his name is Snake and he has a big mullet.
Yeah, and he sounds like a Ninja Turtle. It's like, "Whoa, man!" Like he's dubbed, but it's just like this voice does not match this face.
Because they have an amazing scene at a bar where Max is introduced as like the good guy, uh, and it's like every scene with Max and his cop friends, I am trying my best not to piss my pants laughing.
And again, much like
Oh
Mystics
man,
of Bali, all the lines are delivered so nonchalantly, no matter what the circumstances. There's very little reaction to like the insane things that are going on around these characters. One of the cop buddies says to Max, "Jack bought it," meaning like Jack died, and he's like, "Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Let's go." Like it's just like,
do you recall though that that moment toward the end of the film when Max is taking Erica, that's the granddaughter, away, and they're being chased by the Lady Terminator, and she just matter-of-factly, like, breaks some cop guy's necks and throws him against the wall, and then, Max is like, "Oh, no!" And do you remember this? Where he, like, reacts very, like and he's like, "Oh, no!" You know, he's dead, and then he just grabs her, stops saying that, and then just leaves.
Yeah, I guess I mean, yeah, I don't yes, I remember it, but that's also, like, his reaction in, like, almost every scene.
Well, there is the scene where he's vulnerable.
When's that?
And he gives the backstory.
Oh, the
Well,
backstory, yeah, yeah,
when
okay.
they're in the forest before the good couple has sex that doesn't involve murdering genitals, and he gives the backstory about his past partner and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh my god, every like one of the things when I'm watching this again, I'm thinking like this so accurately captures this kind of like American bravado that you see in action films of the 1980s,
Yeah.
like a Commando or something, where you have this idea of masculinity, this idea of camaraderie, this idea of like, yeah, let's get her, like take that, you bitch. There's like all this stuff that just on the one hand feels so accurate to like even that kind of like jingoistic American military mentality that's kind of connected with masculinity and all that stuff. But on the other hand, unlike a film like Day of the Dead, which satirizes that, this feels like by just presenting it as no, this is the truth, it's like more funny because of it.
Yeah, I don't even understand Max's friends. They're like rednecks. They're not cops. They're almost like vigilantes, but they're friends with the cop.
No, they're cops.
Snake's a cop?
Yeah,
Okay. We'll get back to them because I'm like, well, where'd they get all their anyways, we're like, where's the tank and the helicopter come from?
the cops.
Okay, we'll get there. Okay, so another famous scene that is in this that is also in Terminator is the eye cutting scene
Yes.
when Arnold goes to because Arnold's a machine, he cuts out his eye. She's not a machine in this movie. She's possessed by the South Seas Queen, but that doesn't stop this movie because she's hit with that green mystic ball from the grandfather of Erica.
Not the grandfather, because the
Who's the old guy? Uncle? We have another old uncle?
isn't he like an uncle? Yeah, because technically, yeah. Well, this is a trope. Technically, isn't her grandfather the guy that had sex with the queen?
I think that's her great grandfather. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. But no, but I think it's not a it's an uncle. I don't think it's a direct grandparent.
Okay. Okay, well, he hit her with this, like, mystic green ball or something, so she's like anyway, so the Lady Terminator, it's that scene with the taking out the eye, except here she just takes out her eye and then runs it under the faucet like it needed to be rinsed.
Yeah,
Then she puts it back, but I don't know if you noticed this, she puts it back in the opposite eye that she took it out of. It's the other socket.
efficiency.
So I guess she just needed to wash her eye?
Yes, and they didn't have eye wash stations at the hotel.
There's a low angle shot of our Lady Terminator walking menacingly.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Which is used as often as the witch's laugh from Mystics of Bali. Like it's just constant in this movie. There's also I don't know if you noticed this because the editing's like it's weird, but in a way I've never seen before, where it'll take snippets of scenes we will come to later in the film,
Hmm.
but they're put in earlier in the film,
Yeah.
like the techno bar.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's happening.
I have no idea.
It's almost like movies saying, like, "If you're bored, don't worry, there's action coming." Like anyways, the climax is a little different than Terminator.
A little.
I didn't know if we were gonna get that because she's not a machine in this movie, if we were gonna get where the skin gets melted off from fire or something. We kinda do get that. I don't know what we're looking at. She's not a machine, but she's like a zombie machine thing? I don't know.
So yeah, so they end up at I don't know. I'm assuming it's like an airport. There's all kinds of like open road, but it's not a road. She, the Lady Terminator, is chasing down the good guys with her car, and they're shooting at her, and she's trying to run them over. And then Max police friends show up with the heavy artillery,
Yeah, they have a tank and a helicopter that shoots missiles.
Panzer tank, and a helicopter with whatever anti something missiles, and they blow up the car that she's in, the Lady Terminator. And yeah, she emerges from it not as you would have assumed, part lady, part machine, but she emerges because she's not a machine. She emerges as, yeah, like a zombie.
Yeah.
With her mystical powers of her like laser beam eyes that can like blow people's chests open and stuff.
Yeah, she's got laser eyes, but she never had that before. Like, she never used that before.
Maybe she just had to rinse her eyes though. I don't know.
The ending's amazing because we have Max's redneck. I thought they were just redneck friends. I didn't realize that Snake and the gang were cops.
Yeah,
But we get great lines from Snake like "fucking A" and "all right." Like, I just love the dubbing in this movie. I love Snake. And then, like, it comes Erica and the Lady Terminator zombie thing have, like, a confrontation, and Erica pulls out, like, a magic sword?
it's the same weapon from the very beginning of the film.
Who gave her that? Uncle guy?
Yes, yeah. This is the dagger that they call a Chris in the dialogue.
Okay, I missed that. That was the vagina eel that became a dagger.
Yes, that has the power to kill the Queen of the South Sea.
So Erica pulls that out, stabs Lady Terminator, and then Lady Terminator kinda disappears? She doesn't really explode.
Yeah, I think kind of just like yeah, disintegrates or whatever, goes away.
Then the magic sword flies into space?
Yes, or into the sea. Like we don't know, it goes away.
Okay, but it's, like, going up in the sky?
Okay, then yeah, space, whatever.
I okay. Yeah, so last people standing is Erica, Max, and some random guy in a lab coat because he escorts Max and Erica to a car,
Yep.
and they drive off, and then we have a voiceover?
Yes, because there's one at the beginning of the film as well.
Right. So the voiceover says, "The struggle within our souls is never ending. The life of man short and brutal, torn between good and evil of the eternity around us. We know nothing. The stars look on. They have been here long before mankind appeared on our small planet and will be here long after we are no more." Then it says the end.
I love Lady Terminator.
This was fun. This was a fun watch. This one, in a way, okay, it makes less sense than Mystics of Bali, but I was able to follow it more because I've seen Terminator,
Yeah, because it follows loosely like a Western Hollywood narrative. Yeah,
specifically the movie Terminator.
specifically the movie Terminator. Yes.
After T2, this is the best Terminator movie I've seen.
It's shocking. Like, I think this is maybe one of the best genre films I've ever seen. Now that I've seen it again, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I would say it's perhaps a perfect exploitation film.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And maybe that's qualifying it too much. Like, it's amazing. I think this thing is so much better, more entertaining, maybe, than it has any right to be. Because when you think of it, you're like, okay, so what in the hell is this? What's this cheap mockbuster, made with not a lot of money and not a lot of talent? Like, I'm not even sure any of these actors acted again. Like, I don't think we mentioned this, but I believe the lead, Tanya, was a model, not an actress.
Which is funny because she's the best actress in the movie.
But to the film's credit, though, she really doesn't have lines after she's an anthropologist, right? Like for the last hour of the film, she has no dialogue.
Right.
She just looks, has the glower. And in Mystics and Bali, the lead actress there was also not an actress. The story goes was just a tourist who the producers saw and thought like, "Hey, do you want to be in a movie?" And she said, maybe. And they said, "Oh, you can stay in the country for another month." And she said, "Okay, sure."
Are you serious?
With Mystics in Bali, yeah. She was I think a German tourist spotted kind of like by a producer. "Hey, do you want to be like, we're looking for a foreigner. You've got the look. Do you want to be in a movie?"
You have the look of an American. Do you wanna be the lead in this movie?
Yeah, yeah. And what's interesting in Mystics of Bali is that the original export prints have Kathy as an Australian. And then in the US prints, she's an American.
That's funny.
It is funny.
because she's neither.
She's German, yeah. So the actress who plays Tanya in Lady Terminator, yeah, not an actor, just got the look. Will you do nudity? Sure. I'm a model. I'm a dancer. I'm comfortable. It's like, okay, well, here we go. But yeah, Lady Terminator is kind of a revelation. It's base in all the ways you kind of expect it to be, and then in some ways it's even more base. It's such a product of the '80s and all those cringe-inducing ways, but it carries it so far that it kind of moves from, "That's stupid," to, "That's amazing."
Yeah.
It's a competent action meme. I was gonna say film, but it doesn't follow the rules of, when we think of, yeah, like, don't guns reload and stuff like that. Like, what's going on with these two-dimensional cardboard characters? Like, who cares? They're just there filler to go from set piece to set piece of gun shootouts. Yeah, man, Lady Terminator everyone needs to see Lady Terminator.
And then if you see Lady Terminator, you can say that you've seen Terminator.
Yeah, 2 for 1.
Do you have any final thoughts on Lady Terminator?
It's one of those special films. I really, really, really enjoy it. More than I should, probably. It takes me back to like 80s action films, but without the guardrails of logic, quote unquote.
The tagline of Lady Terminator: "First she mates, then she terminates."
That is, I love it. I love it. I love it. That's great. It's accurate and it's great. Do you have any final thoughts about Lady Terminator now that I've introduced this to you?
No, I already said it's my favorite Terminator movie after T2, so
And hey, I mean, yeah, that's kind of a backhanded compliment in a way because there's lots of shitty Terminator films, but
well, T3 has a Lady Terminator.
okay, that's fair.
Yeah, but not like this.
No, not like this.
So, that was our discussion on Lady Terminator. What's your take on our take? Let us know. You can reach us on the socials or at cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, so Indonesian Cult Classics Mystics in Bali and Lady Terminator. Take it away, Dion.
Okay, so I'm going to do my little Springer's final thought. So I've already, said what kind of brought me to these films, in part, like why I kind of appreciate them, in part because they're really symbols of this film world that's bigger than I thought it was and has so many more like treasures than I thought it did, which is great. Part of the reason I love Letterbox is because I always find new films there. It's kind of interesting, right? That both of these films are in different ways films about the dangers of forbidden knowledge. These both have like what you could call quote unquote foreigners kind of going to this, mystical land with all these kind of mysteries and kind of folk beliefs and traditions. And in some way, they want to know too much and they want to know this forbidden knowledge. They learn it and they are corrupted by it, tainted by it, forever changed by it. They kind of, effectively sell their soul for this knowledge. This is, a Frankenstein story. This is Faust. But we see it here. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I also thought it was interesting watching them again, especially when I was kind of reading about the context out of which these films come. It's also kind of interesting to see both of these films as, in some ways, doing what films do, which is kind of respond to their culture, doing what fantasy films do, genre films do, which is to kind of offer a what if. But I just thought it was kind of cool that in both of these films, who's the villain? The villain is this, powerful, scary, dangerous woman. And so, in a country where a certain kind of traditional notion of femininity exists, where the patriarchy and all that stuff is still kind of the dominant system, it's kind of interesting that the scariest monsters are these powerful women with agency, women with action. And I mean, it's not like even in Hollywood, it's not like this hasn't been a thing. I'm totally reminded of like femme fatales, but it's just interesting to see how like even in the realm of fantasy and horror and stuff, these same gendered things pop up again and again. In short, all of their eccentricities, all of their weirdness, all of these choices I didn't know were choices that a film could make. I mean, ultimately, right? Like it's why I kind of love these Indonesian cult classics.
Happy birthday.
Semester 3 is in the books.
Yeah. So this was the last episode of semester 3 For our listeners, depending on when you're listening to this, happy holidays, or hope you enjoyed your holidays.
I hope you survive into the new year.
And in the spirit of Lady Terminator, we'll be back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Cult Film School. Leave a rating and review for the show and subscribe to the podcast to be the first to know when the next episode drops.
Follow us on Letterboxd and our social media, all at Cult Film School, and reach out with opinions on the films we covered in today's show and ideas for cult films we might cover in future episodes at cultfilmschoolpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time. Class dismissed.